Doom: The Dark Ages is both the pinnacle of its franchise and a disappointment compared to what came before. When it hits its high notes, it really is some of the best FPS gameplay I've ever seen, rivaling even the greatness of Doom 2016 and Doom Eternal. Yet moments later, when you open up the map or sitting through yet another Saturday morning cartoon cutscene, it really does just come crashing back down to reality. But here's the crazy part. Doom: The Dark Ages? Yeah, it still manages to hold its own within this amazing franchise. The most intriguing changes are the ones to combat. No longer are you dashing, weapon swapping, and carefully memorizing each arena's layout just to survive. Now, id Software wants you to stand and fight against the hordes of hell. To do this, they've given you the shield saw, a variety of melee weapons, and tons of guns to just rip and tear through everything in front of you. The combat arenas have never been more densely packed, and demons have never died faster. You can use the shield saw and melee to zip around, crushing and punching demons as you go. Now, given id's motto for the game of stand and fight, you might be expecting this version of Doom to be slower than those in the past, but boy, would you be wrong. This game is just as fast, if not faster than its predecessors, extending even to how quickly the enemies die. Behemoths like the Cyber Demon, the Agadon Hunter, and the Cosmic Baron can die in only a couple of hits once you understand what the game is asking of you. By utilizing that new shield as your main offensive weapon, you truly become this unstoppable force of nature. And honestly, that's never felt better. The guns take a backseat by design and help fill in the gaps as you wait for new moves to parry or for your melee charges to refill. They're as fun as always, and firing bits of enemy skull into demonic hordes in front of you really never gets old. Although this version of Doom might feel different, the Dark Ages combat is a wonderfully refreshing take on that formula, and it always had me craving the next battle. Difficulty in Doom has always been in an interesting place because the Doom Slayer is portrayed as this unstoppable killing machine, and yet he can die so easily. However, in the Dark Ages, the Slayer carves through every enemy like butter. Your screen might be coated with demons, foaming at the mouth, but moments later, after several stomps, mace strikes, and a super shotgun round for good measure, the battlefield will be covered in the remains of your enemies. Sometimes, this is surprisingly easy, but for the most part, Doom achieves this euphoric battle high that I've never felt before. This isn't the only new gameplay that you'll be experiencing this time around. We need to introduce Surat and the Atlan mech. I didn't know I wanted a giant mech or a cyber dragon in my Doom games, but I sure as heck wasn't disappointed when they arrived. These two mounts mainly function to break up the pace of the game and add a little variety to the gameplay, which they do well for the most part. However, their respective gameplay sections did kind of drag at times. While they remain cool ideas in concept, in practice, they're mechanically pretty shallow and rarely offer anything of interest outside of a set piece or quote-unquote aura moment for the Slayer. This is a tough thing to reconcile with for me because it certainly does feel cool to be shooting down a ship with chain guns while riding a dragon, but I also recognize that underneath that insanely cool surface, the mechanical waters just don't really reach that deep. I'm left wanting a Pacific Rim style battle to the death, but instead I just kind of get a subpar break from the bloodlust that the rest of the game has been offering to me. Although neither of these sections live up to the hype that the game kind of built around them, they are definitely serviceable and don't knock down the overall experience at the end of the day. However, by the end of the game, the level design and collectibles had definitely worn thin. For those of you that are unaware, the modern Doom games have a number of collectibles and secrets to find scattered throughout the levels. These allow you to fully upgrade your weapons and abilities, making the later challenging levels more manageable. And Doom: The Dark Ages does much the same thing, but with two crucial differences. Most of the levels are very flat, and all collectibles are clearly marked on the map as soon as you load into a new level. What this led to was a loop of killing demons, opening the map, finding the very obvious path to said collectible or upgrade, and going and finding that not-so-secret secret. This constant opening of the map and backtracking through this uninteresting level design without the addition of the stellar combat really did become very old very fast. And this exacerbated the feeling of repetitiveness in the game's final chapters. Far and away, Doom: The Dark Ages' two weakest elements are the story and the music. After giving it much thought, I struggle to even say that the story is serviceable. Having a full-blown story in a Doom game is always going to be challenging, but I firmly believe that it did miss the mark here, and it would have been better if they had just stuck with the limited story moments included in the previous games. I really do commend them for trying something new here, but ultimately it just dragged down the experience for me. None of the characters were particularly interesting, and it just kind of boiled down to good guy fights bad guy with some small character moments and some eldritch themes thrown in there for good measure. But even with the underwhelming story, the biggest miss for me was the music, which is really unfortunate. The departure of Mick Gordon from the Doom franchise is certainly felt in this game. Ripping apart a gore nest or that iconic shotgun pump being perfectly in line with the music were always some of my favorite parts of the new Doom games, but I never truly realized how much it mattered to the overall experience until it wasn't present here. None of the tracks were particularly memorable, and none of them truly had my blood pumping like Gordon's work did. It really is a shame because the Dark Ages soundtrack is a solid piece of metal, but put up against the music previously featured in this series, it just comes up short. Doom the Dark Ages is really a difficult game to review for me. Probably seems like I didn't like it, and I wouldn't even recommend playing it. On the contrary, though, I think id Software has made a really good game here, and it is a worthy, although different, sequel to both Eternal and 2016. Its combat really does reach this high point that's not touched by really any other FPS franchise, and it truly gives you that feeling of ripping and tearing as you stand and fight against the demonic invasion, just as the developers promised. Although the Dragon and Mech sections are not as mechanically deep as I was personally hoping for, they didn't overstay their welcome, and they do provide a good gameplay shakeup. And even with the lackluster exploration and map design, paired with the disappointing music and story, Doom the Dark Ages gave me that Doom high I wanted. And that's really all that matters. It stands strong with its counterparts, and it's well worth its runtime. Ultimately, if you get this on sale or play it through Game Pass, you won't regret it. Now go rip and tear until it is done. And thank you for watching.